Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to be talking about my own journey with endometriosis, how I got to where I am, and some beautiful, beautiful messages that I want to share with you if you yourself are going through this journey with endometriosis. So a little bit about me. I have been living with endometriosis for over 20 years. I am now in remission as of July of 2021, and I've gone through both stage 2 and stage 3 endometriosis, and I've had about 5 surgeries. I support myself now through holistic methodologies, and that has been a big part of what got me over 10 years living pain-free with endo before I even reached remission. And I think this is a really important part of my story that needs to be shared. And so this is why I'm doing this episode. It is a big part of what I get asked about a lot, but because I'm in a different energetic space, I'm in a different place in my life now, I think it's important that I record, document a reflection of what my life was to show you how I got to where I am now, so that you know that it's possible for you. Remission is possible. Recovery is possible. Living free as fuck with endometriosis is possible. It is. And you don't have to be in recovery or remission to even get there. And that's a big part of my message and a big part of what I do in my business, supporting powerhouse women live free as fuck with endometriosis and scale their purpose-driven brands into soul-led empires. Because you are worthy of living the life that you want to live. You are worthy of living that soul-designed, soul mission-led life. Because if you are here, you're here for a reason. You found me for a reason. My story is here for you for a reason. Whether you have endometriosis or not, it impacts at least 1 in 10 women worldwide. That is an old statistic. And it's also only capturing the population of uterus owners. And endometriosis is not specific to uterus owners. I'm going to repeat that. Endometriosis is not specific to uterus owners. It is a non-discriminatory disease. It impacts men, trans women, trans men. It doesn't care about your social orientation, your sexual orientation, your social status, your mental status, your health status, your financial status. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care. But there are resources and there are tools that you can utilize to help elevate your life, because you are more than your diagnosis. You are more than your symptoms. You are more than your thoughts and behaviors and beliefs. You are more than that. You are more than all of that. My belief is that you are a soul in freaking human form. You are here having a soul experience in this human body. It is my belief that you can tap into this power within you that exists in every single one of us, that you have the power to tap into that power within you, to allow your soul to lead you and guide you down a path that is of your highest good, on the path of least resistance, and that it's here to support whatever mission you are here for. Because I truly believe that our souls chose this lifetime, this mission, this body, this experience for a reason. And in our human form, we have free will to navigate that path. But our soul is still in here communicating with us. If we know how to tap into it, we can listen and we can make informed decisions about how we choose to live our life in this time. And so this is a little bit about how I got here. This is not who I was at the beginning of my journey. This is not who I was 5 years ago. This is not who I was 6 months ago. Who I am is constantly evolving. Who I am representing is constantly evolving. And you are too, whether you recognize it yet or not. So let's talk about how I got here. I feel like I went off a little tangent, and that will happen in these videos because I am a channel for source and for higher consciousness communication, whether that's through my highest self, through my guides, through source, through spirit, through whatever else that is I'm learning to channel through. A lot of my videos are channeled messages. I feel an urge to come on here to record this video and to allow the message to flow through me because I am a conduit for that. So just know that if I'm pausing or if I'm looking off into the side, that means that there's something else that's coming in, and I'm concentrating on absorbing that as well as continuing to speak the message that was coming through me. So just know that that may happen throughout this video, throughout this channel. And yeah, so how did this start? How did I start? How did I get here? And this is a question I get asked all the time. And so this is going to be a living, breathing resource that I'm going to make available to more than just the YouTube community so that you can get a better understanding of how I got to where I am. And a big part of that comes from this idea, this belief that I hold in the law of attraction, and that everything holds a vibration. And so when I started this journey and through the first couple of years of my business, I was going back to this story and repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And there's a different vibration associated with this story than where I am baseline now. There is a huge transformation between where I was and where I am now. And it's important for me to communicate that before we even begin, because there is a vibration that I am bringing to this story from this place where I am now to be able to talk about my journey then. And it's going to be a completely different vibration than if I told that story to you then in the moment. So I want you to know and love and receive, if it feels good for you to receive this message from this vibrational place, and also know that this is here for you to come back and listen to however often you feel like you need it. Because my story is not just for me. My story is for you. It's for us as a collective, as a whole. Because we are all connected. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned along this journey. And I talk about a lot in my podcast. So, endometriosis, for those of you who don't know, let's start with a little bit of education, because I find that this piece is the most fascinating to people who maybe have heard the statistic 1 in 10 women are impacted worldwide. And then knowing that it's not about just uterus owners. And I'm going to get the door. I just scared myself. Hold on one second. And we're back. And we're back. Okay. Just a quick delivery that interrupted and scared the bejesus out of me. So, endometriosis is a disease that impacts every human, has the potential to impact every human, not just uterus owners. And here is where I want to be very clear about the definition of this, because there is so much misinformation around endometriosis floating around the medical community. Yes, the medical community, as well as the internet, now that we have the internet. I was going through my journey before there was even really the internet. So even then, there was misinformation, but now it's even bigger. So what is endometriosis? Endometriosis is where there is tissue inside the body that is growing and mimicking tissue that is found in the lining of the uterus. The lining of the uterus grows and sheds with hormonal fluctuations in the body. So on a female cycle that happens over 30 days roughly, versus a man's hormonal phase, which happens in a 24-hour period. So very different cycle time frames, but very similar hormonal cycles, okay? The tissue that's in the lining of the uterus is called the endometrium. And this tissue will grow with fluctuations in hormones, specifically estrogen. And when progesterone is high, it indicates that you're about to have your period. So that lining prepares to shed when there is no baby, there's no egg, there's no fertilization that happens, and the lining sheds, right? So that's called menstruation. And so the hormonal fluctuations in the body inform every single part of your body on what cells to grow, what cells not to grow, at what time. And there's an ecosystem inside your body, a hormonal ecosystem, we'll call it. And so that informs all the cells in your body, not just the endometrium. Endometriosis is where tissue that also grows with the cyclical cycle of estrogen and progesterone is growing and trying to shed or trying to remove itself from the body. And it's found anywhere. Because it's not tissue that is equal to the endometrium, it can be found in the uterus. Endometriosis can be found in the uterus. Endometriosis can be found in the brain. Endometriosis can be found in the belly button. Endometriosis can be found in the elbow. It can be found anywhere in the body. It can be found in your eyes, in your nose. And when the hormonal shifts change and the tissue is able to be released, whether in the mouth, the nose, the ears, the eyes, right? Think orifice, then it can shed. That tissue can come out of your body in those ways. So that's why you've seen maybe some videos of people who are crying blood or what looks like blood or tissue. And there have been documented cases of that existing, of endometriosis in the eyes, in the brain, in the lungs. It can be found anywhere in the body, okay? Another key aspect of endometriosis that I want to highlight before we even begin the story are the different stages of endometriosis. So if you are familiar with cancer or other types of diseases, there's usually 4 stages, right? And the first stage is typically little to no symptoms, all the way up through stage 4 being very progressive and very advanced symptomatic experiences for those people who have that condition, right? Endometriosis is different because while the stages are based on the amount of growth and the types of growth that exist in the person who is experiencing endometriosis, meaning stage 1 is minimal growth and stage 4 is very intricate, very adhesion heavy interconnectedness of the tissue. Okay. Typically, stage 4 indicates that the tissue, the endometriosis tissue, has invaded organs and is now taking over that organ. And it could be multiple. Okay, so you have stage 1, minimal growth, to stage 4, invading of other tissues and other organs. Okay. The difference with endometriosis is that the symptoms that one experiences is not at all correlated to the stage at which the disease is growing. So you could have someone at stage 4 who has no symptoms. There's no pain, there may be a slight discomfort, but nothing that is indicating to you on the surface level that that human is experiencing stage 4 endometriosis. And you can have someone with stage 1 endometriosis that's very symptomatic. Someone who is skipping class 2 weeks a month, someone who's in chronic pain, who can't think straight, whose cognitive abilities are impacted. There are a lot of different symptoms and side effects that endometriosis produces. And so it's very important when we're having these conversations to understand that endometriosis and the stage that you're in does not correlate to your expression of or your experience with the disease. Okay. So that's my little education spiel. And I'm sure there'll be some more nuggets that come along the way in this exploration of my journey. But to kick things off, my journey began back when I was 12 years old, almost 12 years old. I think I was 11. I might have just turned 12 when I got my first period. And my symptoms were almost immediate with the way that my body reacted to its first menstrual cycle. There was a lot of blood. There was much more than what I was ever prepared for. And we'll just go into the whole story. So my first day of menstruation, my mom was the type of mom who was balancing work, school, and young children. Single mom in a long-term relationship at this point, but pretty much no help from him in terms of raising us. So we were on our own a lot, and my brother and we went to after school care until 5:30, 6 o'clock maybe, to when our parents could come pick us up. So on this day, I'm sitting there playing cards with the after school daycare providers because I was always more friends with the adults growing up than I ever was children my own age, but that's a story for a different time. So I'm playing cards with the after school daycare providers, and I am feeling like dizzy in my stomach, dizzy in my abdomen, almost like a vibration. And it feels a little weird. I don't feel like I have to pee, but I do feel like I need to do something. So I went to the bathroom, and I've now bled through my underwear, my pants, and I don't know what to do. There's no tampons. There's no sanitary napkins in this bathroom that I'm in because I'm 12 and we're at an elementary school, and the school staff is typically only prepared to handle those situations when the nurse is available. But because it's the after school program, the nurse is not available. So I just do what I think I'm here to do, and I just shove toilet paper in there. And I go grab my jacket, and I wrap my jacket around my waist, and I sit back down. And this is probably at like 3 o'clock. So I know that I have some time before my mom comes to pick me up. My mom comes to pick me up. We're the last kids there, per usual. I've now since bled into my coat, and I'm like, okay, we have to go home now. We have to go home now. And she's like, yeah, we have to go grocery shopping. And I'm like, no. We have to go home right now. I don't think you understand. I got my period. We have to go home now. Oh, okay, perfect. We'll go to the store. We'll pick up like pads. I think is what she called them. We'll go get pads. We'll get dinner. We'll go get groceries for the week. It'll be fine. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to the grocery store. Because there's two types of people who go to the grocery store, okay? There's the person that has the list, and they go into the store, and they get exactly what's on the list, and then they get the heck out of there. And then there are the people like my mom, God bless her, who have a list, maybe, but who also walks up and down every single aisle, just in case something didn't get put on that list. So I know that when we're going into this grocery store, that it is not going to be a 10-minute activity. It's probably not even going to be a 30-minute activity. We're going to be here a while, okay? And I'm 12. I've never had this experience before. I've never felt the things that are going on in my body before. And yet, I'm feeling this need to communicate them with her, but I don't have the words. And we're also a family that grew up very waspy, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, where there are certain conversations that you just don't have in public. There is certain information that you just don't have in public. And I'm 12 years old, and I know this. It's been ingrained into me that there are certain conversations that you only have behind closed doors, and even then, you probably don't have them. So here I am, 12 years old, bleeding through God knows what at this point, feeling all these things that I don't have the words to explain. And now I'm being dismissed. I'm being gaslit from my mom. She didn't know this at the time, but this is what was happening. And I feel it's very important for me to be transparent about all of this, about what is gaslighting. Gaslighting is when you are experiencing something and you're communicating it to someone and that person is telling you that that's not your experience. Okay, that's gaslighting. And this has happened throughout my entire experience in the medical field, with my family, with friends, with people in the education system. It was happening from day one. Anyway, I make it to the point where I can't hold my voice in anymore. I am now beyond the point of controlling my emotions, these feelings that have been boiling in me for hours. We're probably on hour 4 or 5 at this point. Okay, it's probably like 6:30 that this is happening. Maybe even 7 o'clock if it was a late day. And I remember standing in the beginning of the beginning of the store. You know, you're like near the cash registers and you can see the door, and then there's the aisles on your right. And my mom was in front of me, and I'm like, we need to go home right now. Right now. I am bleeding everywhere. We need to go home right now. And I don't know if this was all in my head, but I just heard silence. Like the supermarket music turned off. Everybody stopped talking. And I'm sure that this is mostly in my head, but it was an experience that I was not expecting. It was a very surreal experience. And I remember just tears streaming down my face. And my mom being like, okay, we'll go home. And being like annoyed, embarrassed, all the things that she's experiencing that are not my responsibility, but I'm experiencing with her. And yet my anger and my voice is demanding that I speak up first, that I speak up regardless of all of that, regardless of the repercussions that may or may not happen based on me and this outburst. And so we get home and I already feel this rage. And the rage that I feel inside me lasted a very long time. It was a big part of my story back then. It was a big part of my identity back then. I had already spent 12 years feeling, and I'm trying to find the right word here. In my family, I was always the person who had a big personality. I was expressive and big and loud and opinionated, and everybody always said I would be a good lawyer. I went to kindergarten dressed in a 3-piece suit with a briefcase backpack, knowing that I would one day become a lawyer. Again, story for another time. But I say this to say that there had already been years of me being asked energetically and literally to make myself smaller to make other people feel comfortable. So when I say that there was a rage burning inside of me, this was a whole new level of rage, because I had already spent 12 years of putting myself into smaller boxes. And here I am feeling absolutely out of control hormonally, emotionally in this process where I don't have the words to communicate. I don't have an understanding of what's going on inside my body. I don't feel like this is normal. No one is communicating with me. I'm not communicating with anyone because I don't have the words. There is just so much emotion and rage going through me at this point in time in my life. Okay. Within a year, my pediatrician and myself decided that it's time for me to bring in a specialist, because the level of pain that I was experiencing, the level of symptoms, side effects that I was having were not normal. Again, I still didn't have the language to communicate, especially with my mom, but my doctor, thankfully, was a female who asked a lot of questions. And through those questions, we decided to go on birth control. And for me to see a gynecologist very young, right? So I think when I turned 13 is sort of when we started trying to do birth control. We started the conversation of birth control to kind of help with the symptoms. By 14, I was already on birth control, and I was seeing a gynecologist. The gynecologist that we brought in and I grew up in the Boston area, so we have some of the best medical teams, medical options. Access to medical care is fairly good in Massachusetts. We have like the smallest footprint with the largest population of high quality healthcare and education in the US, right? And when we did research, and when I say we, I mean my pediatrician, I was 12, 13. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. And at this point, I have no idea what's going on, still don't have the language to communicate. I'm just trusting my parents and my pediatrician, and now soon to be my gynecologist, to lead this discussion, to lead the way, to tell me what's best for me, because I'm 12 and 13 and 14. I don't know. I don't have a white coat. I don't have letters next to my name. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to university. I don't have all this information in my head about what is going on. They know best, right? So I thought. So I trusted my doctor and my family to make these decisions for me. We brought in someone who was supposed to be a specialist in her field and to have extensive experience with the types of problems that I was experiencing. Dr. Esther Madzaviri. This woman, I don't believe that she had ever any bad intentions. I think she was doing the best with the information that she was given, that she was trained with, and that she had experience with. And I want to do a slight disclaimer here, a little side note, if you will, that in the US, and to my knowledge at this point, it's 2023, there is still no formal training in any medical program in the world that focuses on endometriosis, trains the medical professionals, nurses, doctors, surgeons at all on how to recognize endometriosis, what are the actual treatments and options for pain management, for symptom management, and treatment of endometriosis, which are 3 different things, by the way. There is no formal training that happens in med school for nurses, PAs, physicians, specialists, unless you are specifically training in endometriosis and infertility later on, right? That's like med school, residency, fellowship, and then your specialty. That's like forever into your career. We are not training our medical professionals who are here as first line, not even school nurses are we training to recognize these symptoms and these resources that are available to support us. We're not even training the first line defenders that we have on how to support people who are going through this experience. Okay. So I recognize that now, that she didn't have proper training to be able to provide the type of support that I needed. And she supported me through probably 3 years of trying to work with birth control, pain medication combinations. After the first year of trying different combinations, we went on full-blown continuous birth control. No periods, no breaks in medication, full-on suppression. Okay. And I also want to make a disclaimer here that this is my own journey. This was the path that I walked. Every single person is different. Every single person's story is going to be different. What was right for them in the moment is going to be different. What's right for you in the moment is going to be different. And it's really important, hear me. It is really important that you listen to your own body and you have conversations with your own support team, your own advocacy team, your own medical team to determine what's best for you. Okay. But that's, again, a whole nother video. It's just my disclaimer. Also, disclaimer, this video is not meant for any legal advice, medical advice, or other professional advice. This is for informational purposes only. And please consult your medical professional, your legal professional, whomever. This is not meant to diagnose or treat anything. Okay? I should probably move this to the beginning of the video, but for the sake of keeping it real with you, this is where I'm at. Okay, so I was working with my medical team. I was working with a specialist. We went on continuous birth control. I'm maybe 14, 15. I'm now missing like 2 weeks of school a year, 2 weeks of school a month. Okay. My rage is out of control. My emotions are out of control. I am like the hysteric of the family. Everything to me feels big. Everything to me feels so much bigger than my even existence. And it was really, 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 really hard for me to be inside of a body that wasn't doing the things that I thought it could do or things that I expected it to do. And it wasn't working in the same way as other people's bodies. And I wasn't able to do the same things. I played soccer my entire life. I did gymnastics. I rode horses. I did all of these things. And when I was experiencing these 2 to 3 weeks a month of chronic pain, I was popping ibuprofen like it was candy at 14, 15. I was on hardcore pain medication before I was 16 that I was popping like candy, in addition to the ibuprofen. Again, which no one told me about the ulcers that are the side effects of that. So please make sure you drink a full glass of water and follow your physician's instructions on how to take pain medication and all medications in your life. So we get to this point where we're now like 3 years into our relationship, me and the specialist. And I'm consistently told by her that my experience cannot be my experience. I cannot be experiencing the level of pain that I am experiencing because otherwise I would be dead on the floor, or I wouldn't be able to function, or I would be exhibiting different symptoms. And I'm like, I am telling you that something is going on. This is not right. And by the time I was 16, I got this reference that I like to use to describe to people what my experience was like, because they started to understand, they started to click in their minds what my experience was like. So I'm going to give you this. When I was going through the worst of my worst with endometriosis, it felt like, are you ready? Are you ready? It felt like there was an army of Chucky dolls armed with Freddy Krueger hands, and they were having a competition to see who could get out of my body first, and they would win a prize. Okay, so there's an army of mini Chucky dolls just clawing through my body, clawing through my womb, crawling through everywhere to try and get out to the other side of my body to win a prize. And this was every day, pretty much all day. Okay. This was my experience baseline. And I was being told that that was not possible because I wouldn't be able to function if that was my true representation of my experience. To which I said, there is something more going on here. I've read at the library, because there's no internet, I've read that there is something, that there's a surgery, that there's something that you can do to figure out what's going on, because ultrasounds and medication are not working. And she's like, well, we could do a laparoscopy, which is where I go in surgically and see what's going on. And that's really the only way for me to diagnose if you have endometriosis or another problem that's going on. And I said, okay, let's do that. And she put it off. She put it off. She put it off. I don't think you have endometriosis. It's a very expensive surgery. It's recovery. There's a whole thing. Like, let's just not do that. So we put that off until I was 16. And I said, I cannot live like this anymore. I need you to do the surgery. So let's book a surgeon. Let's find someone who can do this and let's go on. And I'm sure this was not a calm conversation, but for the sake of posterity, we'll keep it as calm and civil as I remember. So she's like, no, I can do it. And so again, I'm like 16 and I don't question anything. She's the one with the MD next to her name. She's the specialist. She's the woman who works with vaginas all the time. Like, she knows best. And my parents didn't question it because she knows best. She's recommended. And if you can see where this is going, you can tell that this is not a good outcome. So I do the surgery with her and she comes back and she says, well, just like I thought, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm like, okay. I am now in more pain, if that's even possible. I am now in excruciating pain now than before the surgery. When I tell you that before was like Chucky dolls, this is like, I don't know, Braveheart. Like, drawn and quartered on the daily feels like my insides are happening. Okay. I was absolutely miserable. I think the recovery time for a laparoscopy is like 2-3 days, maybe a week. It took me months to recover, to be able to get back to normal function. I never felt the same. I never emotionally recovered. I felt abandoned, if I'm being really honest. I felt abandoned by my family. I felt abandoned by the medical system. I felt abandoned by my doctor, who then dropped off the face of the planet, by the way. I think I saw her for one post-op follow-up appointment and then she dropped off. She supposedly got pregnant and was on bed rest and never came back to the practice. I never saw her again. And I'm in more pain now than when I was. So my first surgery was in June. By July, I was feverishly going to the library, talking to librarians, using whatever internet was available at the time to find another opinion, to find a second opinion, because I knew in my body that something was wrong. And this was the first time in my life up until that point where I was following the voice inside me that is screaming bloody murder, that something is wrong and we need to speak about it. So this is like a 10x version of the voice inside of me from the grocery store, right? Telling my mom we need to go home. This is like a 100x version of that voice. And so I did my research and I said, I don't know who I'm looking for, but I'm going to go with Children's Boston Hospital. He's also at Brigham and Women's. I found a surgeon who specialized in endometriosis and women's infertility. And again, this is something I was told at 13 that I would never have children, and that at 15 with my boyfriend before the surgery, I was told, hey, you're in a relationship. Now would be a really great time to try and have children. If you ever want to have children, now would be a great time. Forgot to mention that. Yeah. The 3 options that were given to me at the time were have a baby, be on birth control for the rest of my life, or have a hysterectomy. So after the surgery, like that was what was offered, was like, okay, well, if your symptoms don't improve, like we should talk about having a hysterectomy. I was 16. And these are the same 3 options that are still being talked about in the medical field. And I just want to point out that none of those options are actually treating endometriosis. None of them. That's another side note. Another video for another time. But just for the sake of misinformation not being spreaded around, they actually don't treat any of the root causes associated with endometriosis. So please make sure you're having informed consent conversations with your medical professionals before agreeing to any type of treatment. Just my personal opinion. So I find this guy online through the grapevine that he would be a great second opinion, third opinion, I guess, at this point. And so I call up and try and make an appointment, and there's an 18-month wait list. I'm in excruciating daily pain. It's now the summertime. I'm working 2-3 jobs, and I can barely get out of bed. At this point, 2 years ago, my brother had, actually in the first year of my period, my brother, who was 3 years younger than me, was so scared at the amount of blood that, because we shared a bathroom, the amount of blood that he was seeing, like my general like demeanor change. He was so scared at the beginning of this journey that I was dying, that he told the entire school that I was dying. And that's why I was missing class. And when I found out, I was like, what the heck? Here I am curled up in the fetal position, right? Like yelling at my little brother, who's just like sitting next to my bed, holding my hand, crying, feeding me chocolate chips and green tea, because that was like the one thing that he thought would make me feel better. And it's still to this day, one of the things that I love to receive when I don't feel good is chocolate chips and green tea. And that became our thing. Like we bonded a lot during that time. He would come and sit and do his homework with me while I was in the fetal position trying to do my homework, or even when I was in recovery from surgery, he was the one who was at my bedside most. At least that's my memory of it. So when I found out that he told the whole school that I was dying, I was like, I'm not dying, I just have my period. So what does he go and do? He tells the whole school, just kidding, Jacqui just has her period. Which of course, like terrible when you're 13 and you're the first person like in the school to be getting their period. But all that to say that at this point in time, when I'm lying in my bed, even worse off than I was then, the look on his face told me how I was no longer able to hide my pain. And that to me, his face, seeing his face every day, looking at me like that, was a huge reason why I was able to listen to the voice within me and say, we can't wait. We need a second opinion. We need a third opinion. We need help. We need someone who's going to listen and actually do something. So I get on this wait list for this surgeon, Dr. Mark Loffer, who's phenomenal, by the way. If anybody who is like, my experience with him has been phenomenal. He's still my surgeon to this day. So 18-month long wait list. I do the thing that I'm really good at, which is talking to people and befriending adults. And so I knew that he worked at multiple hospitals. And so I became really good friends with all of his nurses, his nursing staff, his admin staff. And I said, hey, I am on this wait list over at Children's Hospital. But if there's an opening over at Brigham or at any of the other hospitals that he's at, I would love to know about them because I'm in excruciating pain and I really need another opinion. So this is where I start learning that I'm actually a manifester, and lo and behold, the hard work paid off. After about 3 months, I got off the wait list and got an appointment for December. So it was about 6 months. So June was my first surgery. December 10th, 9th or 10th was my first appointment with him. It was like a Thursday, a Wednesday. I think it was a Wednesday. So it must have been like the 9th. He saw me on Wednesday. He took a look at me and we spoke for maybe 15 minutes. And at the end of the appointment, he's like, how's Monday for your next? And I was like, for what? And he's like, for surgery. I want to get you in immediately. My first opening is Monday. I'm making an opening for you on Monday. This is Wednesday. Okay. So this is me 6 months later after the surgery, like crying my eyes out that I got this lucky to find a cancellation, to get in off the wait list, to come into his office on a Wednesday. Mind you, it's like a 2-hour drive from where I live. And I've been told up to this point by multiple people that nothing is wrong with me, that there's no way I have endometriosis. I've been gaslit for years and I am in excruciating daily pain. I don't even know if my parents like what they were thinking at this point in time, but I come out of the doctor's office and I got him in tow and I got a smile on my face, and he looks at my mom and he's like, okay, so Monday she's coming in for surgery. And I think everybody was in complete astonishment that this was even happening. I'm sure that there was a lot of trickery that and blocks and resistance that were coming up from our insurance company, because at this point, they knew who I was. They were not happy about all of the types of treatment that I was being put on to begin with. I had to call every 3 months to get authorization for a prescription that my doctor wrote for the entire year, but my insurance company would block every 3 months. And I'd have to go through the whole song and dance of why I'm on continuous birth control and why I need to get a pack 3 weeks early, because God forbid I'm selling birth control on the street, which I didn't even know was a thing then, but okay, cool. So we had jumped through a lot of hoops, but Monday I walked in for surgery. It was my brother's birthday, December 13th. And I was really scared. I was really happy, but I was also very scared because I had trusted someone else to walk me through this procedure before, and I came out worse off than I was. And so I prepared for the worst. And it was a critical moment because it was the first time I thought about not coming out of the surgery alive. I skipped over an important part of the story, which was after the surgery and after my first surgery in June. And she told me that I didn't have endometriosis. There was nothing that she could find that was wrong with me. And I was at this worst part of my life before I started searching for my second opinion. I got to the point where my life, I didn't want to continue living it. And I got to the point where I took action to end my life. And I woke up in an empty house. No one knew that it happened yet. And I woke up and I heard silence. And then the pain came back. And I realized I was still here. I was still alive. I was still in this world. And this voice again inside me said, and I said aloud to an empty house, I will not live like this. If this is my existence, if I'm meant to be here for whatever reason, then I will not live like this anymore. I will do everything in my freaking power to live a life that is all my own, regardless of what anybody else thinks, regardless of anything else that's going on. My life is my own. And so we're not living like this anymore. And so that's when I looked for the second opinion. I found Dr. Mark Lawfer, and I did everything in my power. Every single day I was calling his nursing staff in a very friendly way. I was not Like, yes, I was annoying calling back every day, but I was not an angry person. I was very much a loving, hey, is there any openings? You know, networking, not nagging. That voice inside me, the reason why I bring this up is because that voice inside me again led me down this path. And so here comes December. It's my brother's birthday. We are very, very close at this point. And I'm going into surgery for a second time. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And that's a scary thing. So I just want to honor that for anyone who's going through that. And just take a moment to like recognize the power and the strength that I had then. And that if this is you, that you have now to go through that experience. I literally wrote goodbye letters if I didn't make it out of surgery. Like, I was that scared because my life had been misery from 12 to 16. Maybe I was 17 at that point. I think I was 17 at that point. It was misery. It was hell. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy to go through that experience. Anyway, back to the story, December 13th. I don't know how long the surgery goes, but by the time I am in recovery, Dr. Loffer is there to tell me that, Jacqui, I just want to let you know, you did great. Everything went fine. And you have stage 2 endometriosis. And we found lesions from where the first surgery actually left scar tissue on your bladder. And that's the reason why you were having so much pain, is because she was not qualified to do that surgery. In fact, how she did the surgery shouldn't have been done that way, hasn't been done for decades. And the reason for your pain is because something happened in that surgery that left scar tissue on your bladder. So here I am. I've survived surgery. I've survived this point in my life where I literally hit rock bottom, and I rose up and I started to take charge and self-advocate for myself. And it got me to this point where I finally got answers. And that's what I want to reflect back, is like, I took action to self-advocate for myself, listening to the voice inside of me. And I got to the point where I got answers. And I got to the point where I had a supportive team. And I got to the point where I could have words to describe what was going on. And I had evidence to show my family that this wasn't all in my head, that this wasn't something that I was making up. So that was freaking validating. Okay, gaslighting is real, and being able to point to something physical, tangible, and say, this is what was going on. So listen to me. I know that you call me the dramatic child, but this is not dramatic. This is literally scar tissue on my bladder. This is stage 2 endometriosis. Okay, so stage 2 is at the point where there is endometriosis tissue found in the body, and there's starting to be adhesions, but it's not really to that point yet. Stage 3 is where the endometriosis tissue is starting to adhere or stick, create connections with your bodily organs. And so I had multiple surgeries with Dr. Loffer. We had a whole birth control pain medication regimen that, in addition to holistic methods, which were introduced to me by him, by the way, in addition to the holistic protocol and my medical protocol, I was able to actually live 10 plus years pain-free with endometriosis. And through that time period, I switched between stage 2 to stage 3 endometriosis, and then back down to stage 2 endometriosis. And in my last surgery, it was confirmed stage 2 was the last amount of tissue that was removed from my body. And so fast forward 10 years living pain-free, I go through a marriage, I go through family planning. We decide that this next round of, like, once I graduate law school, we'll start a family. So I start law school, and I transfer up or transfer down. I started law school at New York Law School. I transferred down to GW my second year. And because I had moved from New York down to DC area, I needed to get a new gynecologist. I still had my gynecologist specialist and my surgeon up in Massachusetts that I would see every year, but I needed someone local just in case. So I booked an appointment, and at this point I'm living pain-free, so no big deal. Just go in, start to have my appointment. She's taking my history, and she's like, oh, have you had any headaches or migraines? And I'm like, actually, yeah, like I have been experiencing migraines and headaches pretty frequently. And headaches were something that I had dealt with pretty much my whole life because I had very poor vision when I was younger. I had LASIK, PRK, really, but it's pretty much the same thing as LASIK, it's just a different procedure. In 2010 to get back to 20/20 vision. I was 2 points away from being legally blind before that. So I was pretty much blind. And because of my prescription, because of how bad my eyesight was, because of how often I was wearing my contacts, I had headaches often. So it wasn't something that was abnormal to me. It wasn't a change per se that I had noticed. Anyway, we're trying to get just a regular gynecologist here in the DC area. And she's taken my history. And as soon as she hears that I've been having headaches, she very calmly puts down the pen, like comes very close to me and starts asking me very calm, specific questions. And I'm like, okay, this is not a good sign. Her whole demeanor has just shifted. So now the anxiety in me is on fire. And this is the first time I'm meeting her. Okay. So this is not like we have a trusted relationship yet. And I'm very skeptical given my past of introducing new people to my medical team. So she looks me directly in the eye and says, I know this is not what you're going to want to hear, but we need to take you off birth control right now. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, I don't know who you are, but like, I've been doing this for a long time and my team knows what's going on. I'm not changing what's worked for me for over 10 years because you say so. And so I was pretty sassy and I was like, I think that maybe this is not the right fit for me. And she's like, I can't medically let you leave until we have this conversation, which then, of course, scared me even more to the point where I was like, okay, if you really believe in this, then let's have a conversation with my full medical team. Okay. So she's like, okay, fine. At this point, I'm like texting my husband at the time. He's now my ex, but I'm texting my husband, please, like, can you come to the office right now? Because I'm not going to be able to make it to work. I was supposed to be starting an internship like literally that day. And I wasn't going to be able to make it because I'm having this in-depth conversation. We've now like doubled our time. Like 15 minutes is like the normal appointment time, right? I've been there for like half an hour, 45 minutes at this point, where she is like in her office, like speed dialing my specialist up in Massachusetts and my surgeon to get them on a conference call to have this discussion. So my husband comes, so it's the three of us in the room, two of us on the call, and she starts relaying my symptoms and what her plan is. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable following this without your guys' like input here because what we've been doing has been working and blah, 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 blah. And the phone line goes silent. The whole room goes silent and everybody is like looking at me like I'm the crazy person. And I have all this anxiety that's coming up, and my specialist, my gynecologist, Dr. Zenner, who, if you're in the Boston area and she's still practicing, like, fucking love her. She says, Jacqui, I know this is not what you're going to want to hear, but we need to take you off birth control immediately. And I'm like, hold up. It is December 3rd. I have final exams in 2.5 weeks for law school, year 2. Like, I have a full year left, and then I'm graduating and I have to take the bar. So, like, can we just push this like a year and a half? Maybe that would be great. Could we just like wait? Like, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. Let's just wait. Right? Because I had gone through this experience of taking over 6 years to find something that were actually, it was more like 10 years. 10 years for me to find a protocol of birth control and pain medication that worked for me to control my symptoms and the side effects, really. Just most of the side effects of endometriosis. Okay. And that was not a fun experience. That was over 20 different types of medication combinations. It was hell on earth. It was fine for 2 days, terrible for 6 months. It was miserable. It was a miserable experience. I have PTSD from that experience. Okay. Like big T and little t trauma associated with that experience. So for them to say, we have to change everything right now, was very, 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 very traumatic for me. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I think I held my breath for at least 2 minutes before I even could speak. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is because it's very, very important for you to understand that the reason why they took me off the medication, and granted, I pushed it by a week and I had to sign a form that said I understood that I was leaving against medical advice, but I wanted to get through finals and I was stubborn. So the reason why they took me off, the reason why this was such a big deal is because one of the side effects of birth control is stroke. And I don't know how many of you read the fine print of your medications and the potential side effects, but migraines, especially migraines with aura, which is like a halo or like a golden light that happens when you experience a migraine. Migraines with aura are a precursor symptom to stroke. And because I had had migraines for weeks and months of headaches up until that point, the risk of me having a stroke was extremely high, to the point where everybody on my team agreed that coming off birth control in that moment was the right choice. And I said no. And the reason why I said no is probably a stupid one, but I was very stubborn and I was very scared, and I didn't have the emotional support that I needed to be able to have a rational conversation around this and to be supported throughout my law school final exams. Because in order for me to come off birth control, that meant I was going to need to apply for an ADA accommodation, because it was a serious change to my medical protocol. And back then, when I was going through the same process of finding something that worked for me, because I was no longer allowed to have combination pills in my birth control, because those were the pills that were causing the problems. So I needed to have something that was a single hormone type of pill. And in the past, those were not favorable to my body. They did not manage my side effects. They did not manage any of the symptoms of those side effects of endometriosis. And so I was missing a lot of school back then. So I had to have conversations with my university. I had to apply for ADA. I had to go through this whole approval process. I had to have my doctors come speak to the university, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, final exams are in 2 weeks. I haven't croaked yet. I'm willing to take the risk. I'll sign the form, whatever. Not the smartest medical choice, but it was the smartest choice for me in that moment, because I needed to have the safety and security to finish out at least this final exam period, knowing that I could have my symptoms under control. And setting up that ADA accommodation for the final year of my law school program. And if I needed to, at least I could drop out and restart after we figured this all out, because that was a legitimate fear for me. I was fearful that I was going to have to drop out and be hospitalized while I was going through this process of finding a new round of medication that worked for me. And at the time, my husband was living in California, so opposite side of the country. Florida. He was in Florida at that time. He was a pilot. Anyway, I was going to be doing it alone. And that scared me. And big T, little t trauma associated with this whole process. Needless to say, I came off birth control and I did an IUD implementation. I went for the Mirena. And it was one of the most traumatic, it was the most traumatic experience of my life. It's one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, was the IUD implementation. Not only because of the unknown associated with using that form of birth control, but the actual physical insertion of the IUD was the most painful experience of my life. I followed the instructions. I did a hot yoga class. I went to the spa that morning. I was the most zen, relaxed person ever. Okay. I've been doing yoga like 6 days a week for like 5 years. I knew how to regulate my nervous system. I knew how to get into the zone. I was very relaxed. I was fresh from the steam room, very relaxed. I took a pain pill before, just like they instructed. Like, I was supposed to be prepped and ready as like the easiest person. And because of the political situation at the time, the doctor's offices were booked from open till closed doing IUD insertions, because there was a big scare of reversing access to medical care at that time. So they had the rooms booked back to back to back to back to back. So you get in the room, you wait like 45 minutes for whoever to come in, because everybody's behind schedule. They come in, they do the insertion, they leave, and you got kicked out. Mine was so terrible that a nurse came in. So I had one nurse holding my hand because I requested that. I had one nurse holding my hand. I had the person doing the insertion, and I had, in the middle of the procedure, someone came in because they heard me screaming. They came in to hold my other hand and to keep me company. And the pain was such that I almost fainted twice. I couldn't get up off the exam table. Even then, it took me 25 minutes to get up and get dressed before I could even leave the exam room. And then I had to sit in the waiting room in order for the nausea and the experience of that to pass. And I think I waited like 45 minutes maybe in the waiting area. And I had to get myself home on the subway from DC out to Alexandria, Arlington, to recovery. And nobody told me it was going to be like this. Nobody prepared me for this experience. And so I passed out on the train. I don't know how it was a miracle that I got off at the right stop, passed out on the train, somehow make it home. Everybody they know is in law school, like doing their thing. Like my emergency contact friend is in school. I'm not going to call her out of school. So I call my mom once I'm like walking off the train, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it home. And I lived like 2 blocks from the train station. I'm like, I don't feel good. I think I passed out on the train. I feel very woozy. This is not, I don't know what's happening. And then I passed out once I got home, and my mom panicked. I panicked. Everybody panicked because nobody knew what was going on. The IUD still is one of the worst experiences of my life, the most worst physical pain experience of my life. And it took 8 to 9 months in order for my cycle to regulate, to like for the Mirena to actually start doing its job. I wanted to remove it every single month. I was convinced to leave it in for a year, because if once we hit that 1-year mark, things should normalize. And the goal was to have it in for 5 years, because that would be the time frame that in which I was ready to start having a family. And so the plan was keep the IUD in until you're ready to family plan, take the IUD out, have the surgery, like another laparoscopy to clean everything out, and then go ahead and get pregnant. That was the plan. Fast forward through all of this chaos with the IUD. I leave it in at like the 18-month mark was when things started to really normalize and things got under control. At that point in time, my marriage was really falling apart. And that was really hard. We loved each other. We supported each other. We had a lot of communication issues. We had done long distance for the majority of our relationship. And I knew that things were ending. Fast forward 2 years later, I'm now divorced, and I have a year and a half, maybe 2 years left until my IUD is ready to come out, and I'm supposed to be family planning. So I decide that I'm going to do IUD. I'm going to do a IUI, where I just have a sperm donor, and I'm just going to start my family without a partner, because that's where I was. That's what I thought I wanted in my life. And at that point, I had already been approved by everyone on my team that I was ovulating, that I could ovulate, that my body looked healthy enough and seemed to pass all these tests that it would be safe for me to try and conceive on my own. So that was the plan. And then the pandemic hit. The pandemic. Basically in 2018, I had started to speak out about my journey with endometriosis. I was already living pain-free. The IUD thing was under control. And I really felt strongly to start talking about the myths and the misinformation that was being strewn all across the internet at this point about what endometriosis is, what are the treatment options, why there's only 3, i.e. birth control, have a baby, or hysterectomy, and the myths around that. And at that time, I was getting all of this like praise for speaking out about it. Nobody that I went to school with at any level like knew that I was going through any of this. And yet at the same time, there are all these women from my past who are coming out and saying, me too. I can't believe that you were going through this. This was my story. This was my symptoms. I can't believe that we were going through this at the same time and we never talked about it. And so I really started to own that and create a space online. I've created a Facebook group that was for women with endometriosis to have these types of conversations, and for me to be able to share the parts of me and the parts of my journey that helped me get to live pain-free before even the point where I was at. And so I was doing that. 2018, 2019, 2020. Before the pandemic, literally January 2020, I started my business, started coaching. I started doing wellness coaching, embodiment coaching, mindset coaching, a lot of partnerships with brands, writing guest articles on blogs, like speaking. I started using my voice a lot more and opening up opportunities for people to come into my world and learn from me and how my journey with endometriosis really shaped my experience. And then the pandemic hit. And here I am, I've graduated law school, I'm working at a corporate company, I'm supporting the international and domestic contracts department, I'm supporting 5 different time zones, I'm working 16-hour weeks, and I'm like, hell to the no. No. We parted ways in December of 2021. I left corporate and I moved home, and I decided in July of 2021, December of 2021 was when my IUD was supposed to come out. And I was like, okay, I'm leaving corporate. But before I do, I'm going to take out my IUD and I'm not doing IUI. I'm not getting pregnant. I'm going to follow my dream that I've had since I was 15, and I'm going to move abroad and I'm going to build a life there. I'm taking my cats. We're moving abroad. I don't know where yet, but we're moving abroad, and I'm going to live this life that I know that I can live because I've worked my ass off to get here. My body is a freaking fortress. It is this gorgeous miracle that every single day surprises me. And I know that doing the work to getting here is within me and that it's possible regardless of what anybody else says, because I've already done the impossible. I've already had 10 plus years being pain-free, which no one thought was possible. And I'm working with a functional nutritionist. I'm working with all these holistic modalities, acupuncture, Reiki, meditation. I'm doing all the things. I'm doing all the things that I possibly can to support my body. And I believe in my body. So in July of 2021, after working really, really hard with a functional nutritionist, I booked an appointment that was early. I found a cancellation. I went into my doctor's office, my specialist who's been with me since I was 17, and said, so I'm here for my IUD removal. And she's like, great. Did you pick a donor? Like, who are we using? Why isn't your mom here? And I'm like, actually, a change of plans. I started a business, and I actually started doing affiliate marketing, and I have my own business, and I'm actually going to move abroad and build a life. And she's like, uh-huh. And I'm like, without birth control, without pain medication, without anything. At this point, I hadn't used pain medication in like 3 years. And even then it was like for 3 days. It wasn't like a big thing. I hadn't consistently used pain medication in 10 years at that point. And so I said, this is what I'm doing. I know this is not what we talked about. I know this is a change, and I need you to get on board. And so she kind of looked at, she like had a look like flash across her face, and then she composed herself and was like, I'm here to support you with whatever it is that you want to do. If this is the direction that you want to go, I'm here for you. I'm here for that. I had just had a surgery like 8 months before, or 6 months before. I think I had it in January of 2021. And no, January of 2020. 2021. I had the surgery. So this was very soon after, soon being a relative term, but soon after the surgery that I was requesting the IUD to be removed. So it was July of 2021. And I had that removed. And it was the most liberating experience. I knew at that point my body was able to handle it. I knew at that point where my life was going. I knew at that point what I wanted. I knew what my voice sounded like. I knew how to trust that voice. I knew how to take aligned action with that voice. I had become this person that my 16-year-old self never would have recognized, never believed that was possible. My 17-year-old self did. The rock bottom version of me did, even though she didn't really believe, but like she had an inkling. And here I am stepping into that. And December rolls around. There's a lot of big life things that happened that confirmed for me that life is too short. We're never promised tomorrow. And so how can I live my life in a way that's in alignment with my vision of what my life looks like, regardless of the statistics, regardless of what anybody else says, regardless of the expectations of anyone else? Because I was leaving a 6-figure salary and like a very cushy job to the unknown, right? The unknown, the absolute unknown. And so I quit. I moved home. I took my cats. I'm like, hey, mom, dad, like I'm moving home for a time, and then I'm moving abroad. I'm gonna move to Brazil was my idea. And then I was like, post-pandemic, not such a great place. So I contacted a couple of my friends, and they all moved to Portugal. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a trip in 2022. We'll see what that's like, if I even like it. I spoke Portuguese because of my ex, and all of my closest friends from Brazil were living in Portugal at that point. So I'm like, okay, let's go take let's go take a trip. So I was nannying, I was working my business, I was just having the time of my life, supporting women, supporting mothers, raising children. I mean, I've been doing that for 15 years, so that was easy money, but it was also just helping out friends in need. If you remember, the pandemic, daycare was insane. There was wait lists that were 2 years long, and 2 of my friends had given birth during pandemic and needed support, and I was available to do it. And it was the most enriching time that I spent. It was so what I needed for my soul. So I took a trip here in Portugal in June for like a week, fell in love. I think it was 14 days, fell in love, came back in August, September timeframe, found an apartment, this apartment, and figured out a way for me to be here and create a life here. And here I am. I have multiple businesses. I have multiple brand partnerships. I'm running this beautiful life that I never thought was possible. I am the happiest that I have ever been. I am still in remission. It's almost 2 years since I quote unquote hit remission in July of 2021. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the whole wide world. I wouldn't. I get to have amazing communication with people from all over the world, from all over my life, from different walks of life. And my mission to support and inspire and hold space for and guide other women in whatever way that I can to find the resources and the support and their own inner voice first and foremost, their own inner voice, to listen to that voice and allow that voice to lead their life, because it is the voice that is leading them on the path of least resistance to wherever it is that you want to go. And so to be able to support women in that, to be able to support them in not only finding and listening to that voice, but also in creating this soul-led, fuck yes, bigger than life that is free of other people's expectations, that is fully their own, that is wealthy as fuck, that is impactful as fuck, that is literally an empire and legacy, that has a mission that is greater than themselves and allowing that to come to life, whether that's through a nonprofit, whether that's moving up into the C-suite, whether that's leaving a C-suite position, whether that's opening up your own business, whether that's working with brand partners, whether that's never working a day in your life and only using passive income, whether that's becoming a coach or starting what are those called? Brick and mortar businesses. My brain was a little farty there, right? If you want to start a breathwork practice or a yoga studio, whatever your dreams are, however big they are, if they are calling you from your soul, I'm here to support you. So that's my whole story on how I got from 12 years old in chronic pain with Chucky dolls crawling through her body to remission, living in Portugal with her 2 cats, building empires with powerhouse, high-achieving, fuck yes women, creating the life that is free as fuck, creating soul-led empires and legacies. Like, it is freaking phenomenal, this life. And I am just beginning. And that's my story. That's my intro. So if you are here for it, if you have questions about any part of my life's journey, if you are looking for support, whether that's through friend, mentorship, program, group, program, let me know. There's tons of people in my network. If I'm not the person you want to work with, or I'm not a great fit for you or for us, there are plenty of people in my network that I can refer you to. There's plenty of resources that I can provide for you. Please let me know how I can serve, because it is my mission to help women, all women, but especially women with endometriosis, create their fuck yes life, to create a life that is worth living from their soul, that is led from their soul, that is built on this purpose-driven collective healing, worthiness wound-free, wealth-expanding life. So welcome to my page. I hope to see you around. Find me on socials, find me here, reach out. I would love to get to know you. And I hope to see you around soon.